took the liberty of moving this out because of the issue.
Going to be there.
Yeah.
Because it's for Deacon, so it will be right there.
That's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
least I hope so.
You just want to give them a little bit of, like, you know, if we can get people to slide in and cozy up so that if anybody needs a seat on the end, they can slide into it. And we're
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Topher Gaylord, Bud's youngest child. Buddy would love this day. Bluebird, fresh snow in the mountains. On behalf of the family, I'd like to welcome you all here today to celebrate, honor, and remember Bud Gaylord's extraordinary life. It's a time to reflect on how he has touched each one of our hearts. Your presence here is so appreciated. We know Bud loved telling good stories, and he was a legendary storyteller. We would need hours and perhaps days, weeks, and years to reflect on all our Bud Gaylord stories. So today, we will immerse ourselves in the depth of his character, his love of people, adventure, and the legacy that will live on in future generations. A few notes as we get started. We're asking everyone to be present in this moment and ensure their phones are silenced. We are also inviting everyone to join us here this evening from 6 to 8 to celebrate Bud's life. And one other point, for those that are speaking today, when you see your name in the program, just come on up and say your words and share your stories. Buddy inspired so many of us with his kindness and infectious enthusiasm. He lived his life to the fullest, focusing on the things that mattered most, and dedicated himself to helping others do the same. He gave us the gift of 95 amazing years, and he leaves our hearts overflowing with love for our shared time together. As I reflect on Buddy, the thought that rises above all others is best friend. He delivered his life lessons to me through shared experiences filled with fun, optimism, and an easygoing style. Instead of pushing me in a direction with a parenting drive of ambition and achievement, he'd pull me towards finding my own path filled with passion and purpose. He'd share the beauty of the outdoors in such an intimate way that it made you fall in love with the world around you. Slowly rowing to a honey hole on a pristine lake, giving you first tracks on his favorite powder shot, quietly stalking animals in the pre-dawn frost. These were the intimate moments where we'd share life stories in a carefree, trusting, non-judgmental, open, and fun way. As any best friend, he was always interested in my friendships and relationships. He loved the courting process and shared those moments of finding love in a mate. If you ever wanted a friendship or a relationship to become deeper, you'd have them meet Buddy. He brought all his positive energy to my friendships and relationships and always made a stranger to our family feel comfortable and welcome. All my friends who met Buddy left with a magnetic energy for him and created a deeper bond with me and my family. He nurtured our relationship with fun social media posts, text messages, beers and elk burgers, a camping trip, a road trip, a long phone call giving gardening and tree trimming advice, and home repair tips. He was engaged. Buddy didn't reserve this style for his family only. This was his style with everyone around him, creating closeness and a bond. He was your best friend. It's why it's perfect that he's so affectionately referred to as Buddy. Thanks, Buddy, for being a best friend for life.
Upon learning of Bud's passing, I immediately thought of a quote attributed to the writer Hunter Thompson. Now I'm going to have to paraphrase, but I believe Hunter wrote that life should not be lived with the intention of crossing the finish line with the prettiest and the most well-preserved body, but rather to slide in sideways, thoroughly worn out, totally used up, old-fashioned in one hand, a piece of chocolate in the other, loudly proclaiming, "Woohoo! What a ride." So thank you, Bud. It was a great ride, and thank you for inspiring all of us to live every moment of this incredible gift we call life. Would you please join me in bowing your heads as we pray? Almighty and eternal God, as we gather this morning, we claim the promise of your Son to be with us when we gather in his name. We ask for the gift of a renewed awareness of your presence and your love, and ask you to surround us with your peace, a peace that is beyond all human understanding. We give you thanks this morning for the unique and unrepeatable life of Bud. a life that we not only witnessed, but were blessed to share in. With hearts full of hope, we humbly ask you to take Bud into your loving embrace, to wipe away the tears, and give him the first taste of that eternal joy we all hope to share. Eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord, and let your perpetual light shine upon him. Amen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andy Gaylord, Bud's grandson, and it's one of the great honors of my life to be speaking to you today about my hero, Bud Gaylord. Bud loves stories. There was the time when Bud was in the middle of a bathroom break in the woods, and a 12-point buck walked by. He shot the deer from a squatting position with his pants still around his ankles. There was the time when Claire caught a loon on her fishing line at Panther Lake, and they had to call the game warden to cut the loon free. And of course, there was the day on Snowbird when it snowed 40 inches of 2% snow, and Bud skied all day without anyone else around. The truth is, there are so many stories we could fill a book. So here's a summary. Bud was born on December 17th, 1927 in Sodus, New York, on the banks of Lake Ontario. His father, Preston Arms Gaylord, was called Tweet because he liked hunting birds, and his mother, Marion Osborne Gaylord, got the nickname Whitey because she had such bright blonde hair, which seems to be a trait. Bud had two younger brothers, born on his birthday, Bill and Ted. Bill died of polio at a young age, and Ted lived to the age of 77, sharing a lifelong friendship with Bud. Growing up through the Great Depression in Sodus, when the shotgun shells were cheap and you had plenty of time to use them, Bud quickly took to hunting, fishing, and trapping. Over his life, he estimated that he trapped over 1,000 muskrats, mink, badger, and fox, and hunted deer, elk, moose, bear, and all sorts of waterfowl. Bud always had an eye for the next big thing. After high school, he got a job as a deckhand aboard Frank Ritter Shumway's wooden schooner, Skookum, for a voyage from Lake Ontario to the coast of Massachusetts. While underway in a lock, he saved Mary Ellen, the captain's daughter, when he quickly pulled her to the ship after she slipped and fell overboard. Not long afterward, Bud and Mary Ellen married and made their home at historic Preston Farms next to Maxwell Creek on Lake Road. They eventually acquired over 1,000 acres of apples and cherries. On this farm, Bud and Mary Ellen raised 10 children: Preston, Lisa, Ritter, Randy, Tim, Mark, Laura, Peter, Sarah, and Topher. The Gaylord family traveled together on a school bus, sharing many adventures. They skied upstate New York at Brantling, Macaulay, and Gore Mountain, bought a camp on a spring-fed lake in the Adirondack Mountains where there was a deer behind every tree, and took long road trips out west. Inspired by the greatest powder snow on earth and the Wasatch Mountains of Utah, Bud adopted the ready pole as his powder skiing technique, and he was eager to share it with his family and friends. The ready pole became one of Bud's many mantras, a message about life and the need to be prepared and centered for the next unpredictable event that comes your way. Bud was one of the limited partners at Snowbird when it was just an idea for a new ski resort in Little Cottonwood Canyon next to Alta, Utah. While building the Cliff Lodge at the base of Snowbird, Bud and Mary Ellen sold the farm and moved their family to Utah. Next, Bud became a realtor and continued to grow his family, marrying Claire Sullivan Gaylord, and gaining 3 more children, Johnny, Carrie, and Jeffrey. In his late 80s, Bud knew his luck wouldn't last forever. He took many bird hunting and fishing trips with his family, friends, and dog, True. He flew all over the world. He skied his last day at the age of 87. And he often returned to his roots in Sodus and his favorite honey holes in the Adirondacks. Bud would plan for months to get back to his favorite place in the world, Lake Canajagala. When he got there, he knew exactly where to go. 60 feet off the steep granite rocks on the far side of the lake. He'd tie a worm to his hook, keep the bait down 37 feet, and row slowly. The fish would bite within 30 seconds. It was as if they knew Bud was coming. Bud loved nothing more than sharing the history and wisdom of his life, learned from farming, raising children, fishing, hunting, trapping, skiing, and traveling. These stories were filled with truths and eternal optimism. Bud will be remembered for his fun-loving, optimistic attitude, being gentle with words, and being slow to make judgments. His remarkable spirit changed the life of everyone who knew him. When you were out with Bud, you felt like the luckiest person on earth. Thanks.
As Dad's oldest daughter and second child, I'm very pleased to share my thoughts on today as we celebrate Dad's life. Growing up on the apple farm in Sodus and being the second oldest, Terry being the oldest, we were able to see the family expand from 1 to 2 to 10. That was what we had, the advantage over everybody else. Also, over the last 2 years, I had the joy to spend some really quality time with Dad and listen to his many stories as we revisited and relived with family and friends some of his favorite places. Arches, Grand Teton, Yellowstone, Cat's Ranch, Flaming Gorge in the west, Sodus, Rochester, and the Adirondacks in the east. His love of the outdoors, open-mindedness, easygoing attitude, love for people, and his deep appreciation for life, family, and friends was as infectious as his smile. Growing up in Sodus was really foundational for us as a family. And so that's why I really want to focus on that part of his life, because that's the part that I spent my entire kindergarten through 12th grade in Sodus Central School, which is kind of rare in these days. And particularly for the oldest four, we were three who were for all those years at Sodus Central School, and Randy was just 2 out here in Salt Lake. And so the cobblestone home that Andy talked about is on the old Preston farms was indeed a wonderful place for Mom and Dad to raise the 10 children. Dad particularly loved that it was next to that creek, widening into a marsh that joined Lake Ontario, because this was his hunting, trapping, and fishing ground, where he instilled his love as an avid outdoorsman to his children. He taught us to trap muskrats, although I learned later up at Cat's Ranch, hunt ducks in the marsh, and fish for smelt in the creek. In the back of the house, there was a red barn where my parents would host their annual square dance. And many of you experienced that at Dad's 90th birthday that we had out here in Salt Lake. Dad embraced and reinforced positive energy and the importance of strong family values and work ethic. On the apple farm, the days began early and ended late. It was a busy household that instilled character and independence in each of us. We had the outdoors at our footstep and built-in friends with the support of all of our siblings. There were chores assigned to each of us. I think we each remember the blackboard that in the mudroom. And Tim was often up at dawn to look at the traps with Dad, while Randy enjoyed working with the black Labrador Retriever that was Dad's eternal and loved hunting companion, of which I don't even know how many he had. In fact, one time I asked Dad about his philosophy about child rearing, as I had my own, and he brought up the book, How to Train Your Black Lab. True story. From time to time, a family meeting was needed, though, to resolve problems of perceived unfairness amongst us. We would gather around the large round table in the family room for a gripe session, as Dad would call it. At first, there would be silence, a little squirming, until one of us would blurt out our concerns that were usually related to chores. Sometimes new schedules or solutions were discussed, but often Dad would acknowledge that life was at times unfair, and would stress the importance of accepting differences. He would let us know that our concerns were valued, and that although he may not have always liked our behavior, Terry, I didn't want to look at you for that, we were always loved. And Ritter, I don't know where Ritter is too. Oh, there he is. Dad was always welcoming and opened our home to family, neighbors, friends, farm employees, exchange students, and many others. He would willingly give a helping hand or listening ear, teaching the important values of inclusivity, kindness, and passion. One of our German exchange students, Afi, maintained a relationship with our family over 60 years, and she is here today to celebrate Dad's life. Preston Farms always remained in his heart, always, as was evident last summer when Claire and I were there, and he eagerly showed us around all the different apple orchards. Once again, his keen passion and knowledge as an apple farmer instilled in each of us the value of hard work and that people do their best when they are doing what they love. His favorite apple was Honeycrisp, as he was that kind of a guy, but his real love was an Ida Red. Dad's motto was, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and I think he proved that to be true. And Dad was always eager to provide career advice to me on improving agricultural practices for small farmers in Africa, who always liked hearing that I was a farmer's daughter. Dad's love of the Adirondacks created another important base for our expanding family. And at the beginning, we would go up for the weekend ski trips as Dad initiated us skiing on Maple Ridge in Old Forge. Then we moved on to bigger ski areas. Our camp on Little Moose then became a base for family activities and gatherings as Dad continued to instill the love of skiing, camping, fishing, hunting, hiking. Memories also included sitting around a campfire with Terry playing his guitar as Dad loved to sing and make up his own words, "This land is your land." With the realization that our family was outgrowing any normal means of transport, my parents renovated our iconic school bus that was painted green and white with the Preston Farms logo and a custom interior. Have bus, will travel, and we did. It became an integral part of the family trips, leading us down new roads of adventure and fun, amusing and sometimes unpredictable experiences. We were trendsetters ahead of the current van culture. With Dad's go-with-the-flow attitude, our family headed on a trip across the U.S. in 1968. The bus was loaded and outfitted for 7 weeks of camping and traveling. And as we drove across, we went across the plains, and finally we reached the Rockies. And we saw greenness, cascading streams, and tall peaks. And we finally all said, "Oh, we're west. We are west now." One of the memorable stops was Little Cottonwood Canyon, where we hiked up Peruvian Gulch with Ted Johnson. I still remember this so clearly that day, who explained to us where the tram would go. We all returned to Sodus, impressed by the size and beauty of this country. The West had captured all of us. And the following year, my parents became one of the limited partners in Snowbird. Little did Dad fully realize the impact that investment would have on the rest of his life and that of his entire family. And so in 1973, we packed up the bus again for our move to Utah, this time camping across Canada. One of Dad's favorite stories was when Topher, who was 4 years old, asked him at a campground in Yellowstone, "Are we west yet?" Of which, of course, Dad replied, "Indeed, we are." So, Dad, we love you. We will miss you dearly, but your spirit will be with us always.
That doesn't adjust that one. So. Bud used to love talking about spreading his seed, so it's nice to see so much of his seed gathered in one room today. It's tough to figure out where to start with Bud Gaylord, my grandfather. He was an incredibly unique individual. There weren't many like him before and won't be many like him after. I truly believe that. As all of his grandchildren will likely tell you, Grandpa Bud loved giving out advice and teaching life lessons. In fact, he gave me so many snippets of advice and taught me so many things over the years, it's hard to figure out which ones really were the most important. However, I'll try my best with a couple of stories. The first was about 20 years ago, right around when I was heading off to Dartmouth for the first time. I was sitting with Bud, probably at one of the many family gatherings. As a young adult, I had really started to notice that Bud was essentially always able to do what he wanted, or was always getting invited on incredible trips. Whether it was hunting elk on exclusive private ranches, fishing with friends at secluded cabins in the woods, getting first tracks at Snowbird, etc., etc., Bud was able to do it. As I was sitting there with him and thinking about this, I asked him a question. I said, "Bud, how is it that you're able to do what you want most of the time?" Bud looked me in the eye. He always made eye contact when having a discussion. And gave me a quintessential Buddhism. He said, "Well, Travis, if you know enough people, eventually you'll know the right people."
This made sense to me at the time, but it rings even more true today. Bud got out in the world and met plenty of people. He created deep, long-lasting friendships with people of all ages. People who were willing to go to bat for him because he'd do the same for them. This is a lesson that has been passed down to his own children, as I see it every day with them, and one that I hope is recognized and passed down to our generation and beyond. In an online world that's becoming increasingly isolationist, I think we could all use to take a page out of Bud's book and get out and meet enough people. More likely than not, it will lead to a more adventurous and fun-filled life. The second isn't so much a story as it is a series of memories I have with Bud. I have a somewhat unique perspective of Grandpa Bud because I was fortunate enough to live close to him for most of my life. From as far back as I can remember, he included me in many of his favorite pastimes, where he taught me about hunting, fishing, and was obviously integral in helping form my love for skiing. But what I remember the most is just him being there to share in the successes and the failures of my life. Whether it was getting my first elk, my hundreds of ski races over the years, which included plenty of DNFs, graduations, running races, etc., Bud was there for much of it. When you're young and naive kid, it gets a little lost in the shuffle, but it sure as hell means a lot now. The message, though, is to all the grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren. It wasn't just my life. Bud was deeply invested in your lives, whether you always saw it firsthand or not. He was thrilled to celebrate your successes and hear what you were up to, and was quick to offer direct or indirect advice and help through failures and tough times. He was truly a family man, and it was clear he cherished his role as a grandfather and more recently a great-grandfather. With that said, on behalf of the grandchildren, I'd like to thank Bud for all the lessons and for setting a great example on how to live life to the fullest for all his seed. And Bud, wherever you happen to be, shoot him where you see him. We love you.
Good morning. I'm Peter Stevens. I'm listed here as a close family friend. Actually, I'm part of the family. After all, I had over 600 aggregate years of Gaylord exposure to date, and it's all been good. And I would have memorized this like my wife Susan, but that's not in my skill set. So, we all agree Bud lived life to its fullest and did not have a DNF, ever. 1847, Brigham Young and his followers in wagons and handcarts arrived in the valley, whereupon he proclaimed, "This is the place." 1927, some 80 years later, Bud was born in Rochester, New York. I had taught at Strong Memorial Hospital, where I was born 20 years later, but perhaps Lakeside is more appropriate. Bud honed his navigational skills racing sailboats on Lake Ontario, skills that would serve him well throughout his life. His early years were very fruitful, producing untold bushels of apples and cherries, and 10 exceptional children. I should mention, in terms of Sodus, that my Uncle Fred Cornwall had an apple farm in the adjacent Pulteneyville, and we spent every summer there running around the orchards and sailing, much like the Gaylords had. Fast forward to 1973, when Bud and his family arrived in the valley in a school bus, opened the Cliff Lodge, and declared, "This is the ski place." By coincidence, Gail and I had also immigrated here from Albany in a Saab, towing a 6-foot trailer with our earthly belongings. Our plan was to stay for 1 year for my internship and return to Boston for residency in orthopedic surgery. While I was engrossed in my work, Gail sought work in vain. She was finally hired by Sears, destined to be the first woman district manager west of the Mississippi. She feigned job satisfaction, but yearned to return to New England. In September, when I was offered a residency spot at the University of Utah, we faced a dilemma: should we stay or not? I received a phone call from Bill Shorter, manager of the soon-to-be-open Cliff Lodge, asking if Gail was available. I politely thanked him for calling, explaining that she had landed a good job. About 2 weeks later, perhaps with pangs of conscience, we were having brunch at Mule Hollow in Big Cottonwood Canyon, and I casually mentioned the phone call that I had handled, or rather mishandled. Gail choked on her omelet and dashed out to the payphone to call Bill and ask if the job at the Cliff was still available. She had an interview with Bud, was hired on the spot as the sales and convention manager, whereupon she promptly quit her job at Sears, much to their befuddlement. You're going to work at a ski resort? And you could have been a DM for Sears and moved to Chicago? Anyway. We helped move furniture to the Cliff Lodge for the grand opening in November of 1973. There were two unexpected perks. Classified as a dependent on my spouse, my snowbird season pass cost $15. And Bud taught us how to ski powder. So those were both excellent. Our ambivalence about staying in Utah rapidly dissipated as the Gaylords became our adopted family. I previously mentioned Bud's navigating skills. Bud and Claire knew each other from their sailboat racing endeavors in Rochester. He had the good sense to marry her in 1981, and the two of them became soulmates for the next 4 decades. Good choice, Bud. This is an experience I can personally relate to, thanks to Susan. In 1983, I received a phone call from Bud, who was back in the Adirondack training for a, quote, fun run. But he wasn't having that much fun. He described what he thought was indigestion, which sounded more to me like angina. This resulted in him being hospitalized at Strong Memorial Hospital and treated for a heart attack. Upon his return to Salt Lake City, I thought it was time for proper medical follow-up. I introduced him to Tom Callum, the best cardiologist who's here today with the right people, and who in turn engaged Dr. Mansell Pierce, also here today. I observed Bud's quadruple bypass surgery, and when I saw his heart, I experienced the poignant thought of how much joy his heart had already brought to the world and hoped for more to come. I would say that 39 years is a pretty good outcome, not only for Bud, but for all of us. So thank you, Dr. Pierce. Despite periodic interruptions like aortic valve replacement and knee replacement, Bud remained physically fit and active outdoors throughout the rest of his life. For the past 20 years on the annual elk hunt, Bud would convincingly say to Tim, "You better let me take this shot. This might be my last hunt." During my surgical training, I was fortunate to study under several professional mentors who challenged me and shaped my career. It is my privilege to honor and remember Bud as my mentor who greatly influenced my personal and family life. I will close with a short story and a poem. Gail and I were at the Adirondack Lee Camp, and Bud took us out to teach us fly fishing. At one point, he disappeared, and we weren't sure what had become of him. So we looked around, and we eventually found him behind a large rock, taking a nap in the shade. The poem and naturalist and Kentucky farmer and contemporary author, Wendell Berry, captures the moment. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come to the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come to the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hi, buddy. I feel really grateful to be speaking here today. I am Ritter and Wendy's youngest daughter, Bud's granddaughter, little Laura, also known as Laura Preston. Clearly, I have some big shoes to fill. I grew up on the Gaylord camp in the Adirondacks. I learned to fish on Little Moose Lake and to ski on Macaulay Mountain. I thought I could do this. All of this was thanks to Bud. Luckily, as I grew up, I had Buddy as a private fishing and skiing coach. Although admittedly, I have probably spent more time in casting practice on the lawn with Bud and a cotton ball tied to my line than I have actually pulling fish from any lake or river. And in recent years, I would send Buddy videos of me powder skiing, to which he would reply with some helpful pointers. Usually, get your hands up. As I know all of my cousins and siblings do, I feel a deep connection to my Grandpa Bud and to nature. I wrote this poem inspired by both of these things that I love, as well as a mindfulness practice in which my favorite mindfulness practice, in which I sit quietly outside, eyes closed, and take some time to notice what all of my senses are experiencing. This helps bring me to the present, something Buddy was really good at. And so, as I share this poem with you all today, I invite you all to close your eyes. Can you see it? A flash. Scales shine in the sun. A glimmer of hope felt by everyone. A cutthroat, a rainbow, a tight line, a smile. I think that we might be out here a while. Can you hear it? A rustle. The wind chills the air. A keen sense of smell. The meat still with the hair. Soften your breath, quicken your step. Ready the freezer, we've got some prep. Can you smell it? Of course, that fire is blazing, nestled deep in the woods where deer have been grazing. Cozy and warm, the flames crackle and stew. Right there by the fire, a chair waits for you. Can you taste it? The air, unmistakably so. It freezes and churns, makes way for first snow. Soon we'll be skiing and cutting our track through the greatest snow on earth. Now that is a fact. Can you feel it? He's here, beaming down from above. Heart filled with joy and unwavering love. Now open your eyes and look all around. In the face of your neighbor is where Bud can be found. Thank you, I love you all.
Wow. How come I have to follow that? Got distracted there, sorry. Good afternoon. Apologize, these are required. It is my honor to be representing my family today and share a few words about Bud. Mom, Carrie, and I, and Jeffrey too, that is precarious, okay? Mom, Carrie, and I, and Jeffrey too, had the good fortune of having Bud play a huge role in our lives and in our development. He was simply an inspiring force, a true role model for how to live life. I'm certain I'm not the only one here today who simply never thought this day would arrive. Bud has been a larger-than-life figure in my life since I was 16 years old. And I know for many here, he's been a constant in your lives for a lot longer than that. There are so many thoughts and memories that I wanted to speak to today and try to capture the essence of Bud. There is no doubt that he was an amazing man, and trying to distill that into the 5 minutes Tim told me I had to stick to is simply not possible. In fact, many of us watched Bud try to do that himself as the family celebrated his 95th birthday. Even Bud was challenged to summarize his own life, so I don't feel too bad. He got so excited talking about his life that he went totally off his well-rehearsed script that Peter had put into an elegant PowerPoint. It was bulletproof, but he got so worked up despite all the preparation, the PowerPoint, all of Peter's collaboration with his dad. The execution crumbled in front of our eyes. But fortunately, Buddy was able to default to a topic that required no notes or talking points to him, hunting and fishing stories. He got right back on track, and we were all laughing. There was a poem written by a woman by the name of Linda Ellis. The poem is called The Dash. And as I reflect upon how Bud lived his life, this poem offers many parallels to his outlook and to his approach towards life. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to read the entire poem. Rather, I've selected a few stanzas that I thought were appropriate. The poem, The Dash, it's about that line on any tombstone in a cemetery that exists between one's date of birth and one's date of passing. The message in the poem is that what matters most is not the size or the length of the dash, but rather the quality of how one spends his or her time here on earth between those two dates. Here are just a couple of stanzas that I would like to share that remind me so much about Buddy. For that dash represents all the time that he spent alive on earth, and now only those who loved him know what that little line is worth. A second stanza that I found really appropriate, apropos to Buddy. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. Buddy lived his life like no person I have ever known. When I think of him, that dash would be a serpentine. No short dash would apply to Buddy that could capture his life. In Buddy's mind, the ultimate currency to measure one's life by were the memories of being with his family and friends, being a good father, husband, enjoying nature's bounty, telling stories, and lighting up everyone's life with that infectious smile. I heard infectious smile like 3 times. I was like, geez, I got to come up with something else. But it's true. My sister Carrie and I were doing cartwheels when Buddy entered our lives in the 1979 and 1980 time frame. Like all of our lives, ours had some highs and lows. Buddy entered our lives, and we were forever moving in the right direction. He welcomed us into his life. He treated Carrie, Jeffrey, and I just like his own. And he set the tone for creating a family that included his 10 wonderful children. Buddy just did it perfectly. I knew Bud was my hero when he offered to accompany me to traffic court when I was 15. I had been arrested for driving a moped without a driver's license. Bud negotiated my complete release with the district attorney. It was unbelievable. He said he had just started dating that poor young boy's mom. I was an unfortunate kid from a broken family, and could the DA somehow see to it to cut that kid a break? The best, though, was prior to approaching the bench, and I just sort of was getting to know Buddy. He told me I needed to look sad act contrite, slump, put on a long face, be a convincing victim. This is true. Well, shortly after Buddy approached that DA and the bench and cut the deal, he and I were high-fiving each other in the car as we left the courthouse. I will never forget that moment and the fact that this new man in my life was there to help me. As we celebrate Bud's life today and reflect about Bud the man and his legacy, I offer a few final observations to think about. I will never let a day go by without thinking of him and the positive impact he has had on my life and on my family's. For that, I am eternally grateful. All of us should aspire to carry on his legacy and to incorporate as best we can his unique qualities that were so incredibly endearing. Buddy was kind, positive, and encouraging. He always celebrated in others' successes, and he was there to listen when the chips were down with words of encouragement. He loved his family dearly. It was the center of his universe. He didn't have time for negativity. If you hung around Bud long enough, no matter how you tried to fight it, you walked away positive. He obviously cherished nature and the outdoors. For Buddy, it was the simple things that brought him joy. Bud, for me, will always be a source of grounding. Never lose sight of life's simple treasures. They will bring you the greatest happiness he once shared with me. Try and be positive. Don't complain about your circumstance. Pick yourself up when the chips are down and be grateful for the time you were here with your family. I will do my best to incorporate some of this wonderful advice into the balance of my remaining days here on earth. I think that is the ultimate statement about his legacy. He was a huge role model for how to live a happy and meaningful life. Rest in peace, Buddy. You will be sorely missed here, but you will serve as an inspiration for the generations that follow you. I love you.
Hello, everyone. We'll just have to wait for my accompanist to join us. I'm Ritter. You may have heard about oh, yeah. We're going to sing a song that Buddy loved, Red River Valley. Whenever I'd come visit Bud, I would always bring my guitar. We would end up singing this song and many others. With it, and at the end, in the last hour even, I had again my guitar with me as he sat there, laid there, reading, heavily 30, the rest of and then and I played some songs and asking, Bud, do you want to hear more songs? Come on, don't be shy. So this is a song, and the words are on the back of your programs here. So we'd love it if you at least sing along to the chorus if you want to. And we'll start off with the music pretty clearly, and feel free to join in on the verses. It's interesting when we always play this, but it's such an appropriate song. It seemed on that last day. So it was really just very touching as I started playing. Like, oh my gosh, this is so perfect for the service. But also, on the last line of the last verse, that was Buddy's favorite line. And you can take that many ways. So just sort of think about that and the many aspects of Bud as we go through the song and what the different things, what the different verses may have meant to him. And may now mean to us. The sign of a good song is that it has multiple interpretations that people can take in different ways.
I'll need my glasses too.
I feel you.
Yeah. I tried to increase the print size, but it's still not enough. Excuse me if there's a little bit of repetitiveness to this. It's hard to not have it. We tried to set the program up to give some of us some clear talking points, but obviously we're going to overlap quite a bit here, so bear with me. Hello. My name is Tim, and I'm Bud's 5th child. I had a beautiful start to this day. On my morning walk with River, my dog, the sun was rising in the east and the moon was setting in the west. It was a great time to reflect on Bud's life. I'd like to pick up where Lisa left off with the move from Sodus to Utah and beyond. Bud learned to hunt and trap and fish at a young age from his father and learned to ski in the Adirondacks. These activities grew into a lifetime passion for him, and that lifestyle has clearly passed along to not only his kids, but also his grandkids and great-grandkids, as all of us have a passion for the outdoors. Who would have guessed that a fruit farmer from upstate New York would have uprooted a family of 10 and trekked west to Salt Lake City to become involved in the early development of Snowbird, ultimately envisioning and creating the Cliff Lodge. Although there were many trips west in the 60s to Elta and then to Snowbird in 71, it wasn't until 72 when the trek west really began.
Mind you, this was not an easy trek. We managed to get here by bus. Not any ordinary bus, and not staying in hotels every night, but think of it as the precursor to van life. Only we all had to set up tents every night. This bus was a defining element of the Gaylords at the time, and one that brings back so many great memories. Although many of the kids were reluctant to make the move, it was clearly a life-changing moment for all of us, and certainly provided the jumping-off point to even more appreciation to the outdoors and all that it brings. The mountains were bigger, the snow was deeper, the outdoor experiences were more diverse. The hunting and fishing were on a grander scale, but Bud embraced it all and encouraged us to do the same. The connection that was created to Snowbird is something that we all still feel is a part of our soul and was clearly a part of his. The lifetime of friends and acquaintances he made during those times have remained until the end. For our family, it has been the common thread, something to be said for 50 plus years of lifetime passes. I can recall many a day making laps on the tram with Bud and figure-eighting our own tracks. One might even argue that the old days were better. He clearly thought so. Just ask him any time before in recent time. His strong bond with skiing was on full display this past Saturday as we all gathered at Snowbird to celebrate his life. It included children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Who would have thought those seeds would spread so far? It's only fitting that he has chosen to spread some of his ashes at Hanging Tree at Snowbird, but that's a whole nother story. We all think of Bud as a skier, hunter, fisherman, friend, father, grandfather, husband. He certainly was all of those, but I think his greatest gift was connecting with people. He had a knack that not many people have in that way. Just look around the room and see who is here today. Many of you have known Bud for a very long time, and others are much newer to the scene, but all of you have been treated with his same infectious enthusiasm for life that brought you into this circle. From his engaging smile, inviting eyes, and willingness and ability to carry on a conversation with anyone. It didn't matter if it was the hearing aid person at Costco, his favorite store, or the nurses that cared for him recently. He somehow connected to all of them. Bud's parenting fell more in line with guiding us in the school of life. He taught us how to fix things, cast a fly, bait a hook, yes, bait a hook, shoot a gun, learn to ski, travel places, explore new things, and not take ourselves too seriously. A couple of nights ago, Laura and I and Mark recalled the time we were living in the condo and were getting ready to go to school one day when Bud came down and asked, "What are you guys doing?" "We're going to school." And he proclaimed, "Don't you know it snowed 12 inches last night? School will be at Snowbird today." Of course, I had a strong connection with Bud involving many of these activities, whether it was skiing, hunting, fishing, or traveling to the Dolomites, one of the best trips ever. Although many lessons were learned from him at a young age, it was the energy and fortitude to continue to navigate these activities as he aged that was so inspiring. I hunted with him from the age of 5 until his last elk hunt just last fall. Almost 60 years. But I was also able to get out with Max, my grandson, who was also 5, on his first elk hunt last fall, so the legacy continues. The times we spent together doing these activities will forever be on my mind. But I do think The elk, deer, and fish are now resting easier. As was mentioned in his obituary, he began to realize his limitations and yet found ways to stop doing higher risk activities like skiing, while also finding ways to continue to do others. The opportunity to continue his hunting days on the Deseret Ranch, or to make his way to Dirk's Ranch to teach him how to trap and maybe catch a few of his fish, or to go fishing in Montana remained goals of his right till the end. As an example, just a few days before he passed, Randy was on duty for the morning routines at the life care facility, and Bud really needed his phone. After a bit of confusing mumbling and attempts to communicate with Bud, it was determined that he wanted to call Bighorn Outfitters in Montana to secure his spot for the June fishing trip. Determined to get to his next adventure. The doctors who he has befriended and become some of his close friends are to be commended on helping Bud live such a long life. It's hard to believe that he could have his first heart surgery in his mid-50s and go on to make it to 95. He was always doing anything he could to continue this journey, and we are all appreciative of the medical advances and efforts to help him accomplish that. Of course, we can't end this reflection without mentioning his storytelling. He was a great storyteller and was even known to embellish them a bit. The Bud factor. But no one was better at it, so we'll tell you one. We were hunting cow elk on a ranch in northeast Utah. Bud, Travis, and I were together at the time. Travis was probably around 8 years old. We were traversing this ridge line in less than ideal weather when we came upon 8 to 10 elk well down the hill below us. As they began to run across the hillside, Bud set up to take a shot, and when the fog cleared a little bit, he let one fly towards the elk. Mind you, this was a very hard shot, but lo and behold, an elk drops out of the group and Bud was successful. So when we get back to camp, Bud is explaining to everyone how this all went down and how great of a shot he had made, at which I accuse him of flock shooting. Of course, he denied it, but Travis spoke up and asked a question. What is flock shooting? To which I replied, that is when you shoot in the middle of a flock of birds hoping to get one. Kind of like Bud did today with the elk. To which Travis replied, yup, that's exactly how it went. So I leave you with this poem, A Life Well Lived. A life well lived is a precious gift of hope, strength, and grace from someone who has made our world a brighter and better place. It's filled with moments, sweet and sad, with smiles and sometimes tears, with friendships formed and good times shared, and laughter through the years. A life well lived is a legacy of joy and pride and pleasure, a living, lasting memory our grateful hearts will treasure. Although Bud has passed, he most certainly will not be forgotten.
I am Peter, Bud's eighth child, the pilot. We all know of Dad's legendary love of the outdoors. We know of his adventurous spirit, his gregarious, engaging, and affable character, that huge, bright smile that would make him friends instantly and would kickstart conversations along with his handshake and the inevitable introduction. Hi, I'm Bud Gaylord. He was a seasoned traveler from his years at the Ritter Company and the many trips out west to ski. But once he married Claire and shared in that love of travel with her, they were unstoppable. He used to joke with me that retirement is where you wake up in the morning, you have nothing to do, and by 5 o'clock, you've got half of it done. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth for Dad. He always had something to do, some adventure to plan, some trip to look forward to. He never let the grass grow under his feet. As you know, Dad had many lifelong friendships, as everyone who met him could feel his positive energy, optimistic outlook, and can-do attitude. He and his brother Ted were best of friends, so Dad and Claire, along with Ted's wife Louise, took many trips together. Europe, the United Kingdom, Italy, France, Germany, Yugoslavia, Croatia, Switzerland. His brother Ted also loved bird hunting and took him to Argentina for a dove hunt. Their friends Bob and Betty Strassenberg, who were accomplished sailors with their own boat, invited them on trips to the Great Lakes, the Virgin Islands, Antigua, Grenadines, Jamaica. In search of more skiing experiences, he and Claire traveled to Russia, Chamonix, Zermatt, Courmayeur, and a big highlight of his life was a ski trip where I took him to the Dolomites with Tim to visit Topher and Kim, who were living in Italy. At the age of 77, he skied the Sella Ronda. Some of you know what that takes. Right, Kenzie? Of course, Dad always loved when travel could be combined with visiting family, and a trip to Africa included a stop in Tanzania on the way to Madagascar, where he visited his daughter, Lisa. And then he went on to the Seychelles Islands, and he loved his trips to the Pacific Northwest with a flight in my Beechcraft Bonanza to visit Randy and Marnie and other family for Thanksgivings on Orcas. Claire, who then worked as a travel agent, also arranged trips to Alaska, Chile, Hawaii, Venezuela, Mexico, Spain, Sedona. He was always game for anything, Claire says. Any adventure, any destination. It was just part of his play hard mantra. His love of fishing also drove many trips, like a trip to Alaska to catch huge rainbow trout on the Kenai River with John Gaylord. On a trip to go bone fishing in the Caribbean, fishing on the Green River near Red Canyon Lodge here in Utah, traveling to the Big Horn River in Montana to catch trout with Johnny and Vic and me. I invited him to join me on a salmon fishing trip to Dent Island Lodge in British Columbia with Laura that could only be reached by float plane via Vancouver Island. Hunting trips were a constant, and he was always planning on the next hunt. I would get the voice message, "Hey, Peter, buddy, just want to know if you can make it to the hunt, just give me a jingle." Thanks to the comfortable accommodations at the Preston Nutter and Deseret ranches, and through the generosity of Tom Richardson, Dad never stopped hunting for deer and elk. He was never happier than on a hunt. His love of the national parks took him on a memorable trip with Claire at the beginning of their relationship, along with Carrie, Jeffrey, Topher, Sarah, and me, to Glacier National Park and then on to Banff, Canada, Lake Louise, and the Icefields Parkway. He made many visits to the Big Five national parks in Utah, on many camping trips, and took river rafting trips on the Colorado, and he particularly loved Yellowstone National Park and fishing on the Firehole River, or taking in the majesty of the Grand Tetons. As Dad got older, he never really did slow down, and with my ease of travel and lots of days off, he knew he could count on me as a travel partner. So we went on road trips. One to Bryce Canyon, checking out Butch Cassidy's hideaway. We went trapping and fishing and duck hunting on Pancho McCoy's ranch in Montana. And when you think about it, I was like on Pancho McCoy's ranch with Bud Gaylord. I mean, you don't make up names like that, with Butch Cassidy. His love of Japanese food and long-held desire to go to Japan drove us to plan a trip at age 91, where I could accompany him on his dream trip, traveling on a Boeing 787 to Tokyo for 5 wonderful days, experiencing this different culture and food. And even in Japan, he quickly made friends, as that culture honors their elderly and with tremendous respect. When the COVID pandemic hit, he was clearly set back with the inability to travel, but it never stopped him from dreaming. And the day he got his vaccine, he called me with another voice message. Hey, Peter, buddy. And he began to plan a trip back to the Adirondacks, a duck hunting trip in Montana, a fishing trip on the Bighorn. And as Tim said, even in the hospital at the end with Randy, having him call the Bighorn Trout Shop, letting him know he'd be there in June. I tell people there are the go-go years, and there are the slow-go years, and then the no-go years. Bud only knew how to go-go. Maybe the last 2 weeks were some slow-go, but it wasn't until now that he's finally experiencing the no-go. That is what it means to live a full life.
I'm Weston Gaylord. I'm Bud's grandson. As one or two people may have mentioned, Bud was a great storyteller, both of his own exploits and of folk fables, such as the Bert and I stories of Marshall Dodge and Bob Bryan. It feels only fitting that some aspects of Bud will themselves pass into legend. In homage to Grandpa Buddy's life and the tall tales of Robert Service, I wanted to add to that storytelling tradition with the Ballad of Bud. There's a place up in the mountains where the lakes are full of trout and the freshly fallen powder's pristine still, where the elk up on the ridgeline softly send their bugles out, and a man is up there waving from the hill. There the weather seems to love him, all the clouds disperse above him, and it promises to be a bluebird day. So he turns and sets his stride to the rocky mountainside, for he trusts he's done enough to show the way. Now he made his start in Sodus, where they called him Preston Arms. It was said he had the widest grin around. And he came to tend the orchards of the family apple farms, and he grew an honest living from the ground. Soon he raised a proper brace of rowdy children in that place, who would follow him through mountains, hikes, and hunts. And they traveled without fuss in a painted school bus, and he never left a child behind but once. Then he came to Salt Lake City, where the snow is pure and dry and the nasty nip of frostbite rarely burns. And the ski bums up at Snowbird often saw him streaking by with his trademark ready basket carving turns. Leaving no slope unsurveyed and no winding track unlaid, he would ski if there was yet a ray of sun, till at 88 he thought, I'll let the youngins have their shot, and he strapped his boots to take his final run. As a stop-at-nothing sportsman, heaven was a fishing trip in a rowboat with a live one on the reel, or a duck blind in the marshes with a shotgun in his grip and a loyal lab to fetch the fowl to heel. So a camo-suited cadre and their muskrat-hatted padre every autumn stalked the woods for elk and deer. And however fell the lottery, their joy and their camaraderie would leave him proudly beaming through the year. Yet he was no woodland hermit fixed to set himself apart and go live like Davy Crockett off the land, but a man for whom good fellowship was foremost in his heart, never hesitant to shake a stranger's hand. He was never more at ease than with grandkids on his knees, giving tips on how to live to 95. Take an apple seed and plant it. Don't you take a day for granted. Watch a sunrise. Ski the powder. Be alive. Now he's farther up the trail, but we'll carry on the tale of the friend and dad and grandpa who we knew. We will pass it on with relish, and each telling will embellish, for a yarn respun can only grow more true. When the great-grandchildren ask it, just how ready was his basket? Was there Adirondack sunshine in his blood? Did he really bar his door with a wagon tongue? And more, you can smile and answer truly, that was Bud.
Ooh, that's hard to follow. Nice job, Preston. Hi, I'm Courtney Gaylord, Buddy's granddaughter, and I want to thank you all for being here today to celebrate Bud's life. I am so fortunate because I had the privilege and the honor of having my grandfather attend my wedding just 38 days ago. During that night, I looked over at my dad and exclaimed, "This is the best day of my life." And while I meant it then, the sentiment is even more profound today. I know my enthusiasm for that day came as a direct impact of being Buddy's granddaughter, as he always led by example and taught us to be happy in the moment. We had our friends, our parents' friends, our cousins, our aunts, and our uncles there, but we also had Buddy. In fact, Buddy wasn't just in attendance that night, but he was there at 95, continuing to inspire everyone around him. As we debriefed on our wedding, our friends and family have all mentioned Buddy as a highlight of their entire weekend. They watched in awe as they noticed his continued zest for life and soaked in all of his life lessons. That weekend, as Buddy deviated from his traditional venison dinners and ate unfamiliar Persian food, he reminded us to all always try new things. As he danced in the conga line and made his way to the dance floor to do the Charleston, he taught us to never slow down. As the speeches were concluding, he jumped up and quite literally ran to the microphone to give a speech of his own. And in that moment, he taught us to always speak up. But most importantly, as I surveyed the room, I know he was an integral part of bringing us all together that day. And in that, he taught us that love and family is everything. I'm overjoyed that we got to gather as a family and experience these meaningful and unforgettable moments with Buddy during the last days of his life. So today, my feelings are completely polarizing. I feel a deep ache of sadness in my body as I start to realize that I won't get to see Buddy walk into Laura's on Christmas Day wearing his infamous plaid pants again. That I won't get one more wet kiss on the lips from him. That I won't be able to attend another U of U football game with him again, or go up to the country club and drink an old-fashioned with him. But I also feel immense comfort and joy as I look around the room today and realize Buddy isn't actually gone. He is in Max, who is now learning to hunt from his dad, Travis, who learned from our dad, Tim, who learned from our Buddy. He is in Kai as he starts to find a love for world travel, who gets that love from his mom, Katrine, who got it from her mom, Lisa, who got it from our Buddy. He is in Nellie as she learns to love and experience the Adirondacks, which she gets from her mom, Emery, who got it from her dad, Ritter, who got it from our Buddy. He is in Ava as we see her develop a love for dogs, which she gets from her mom, Melissa, who got it from her mom, Lisa, who got it from our Buddy. He is in Skylar and Lucy, who are the happiest when skiing, which they got from their dad, Andy, who learned from his dad, Ritter, who learned from our Buddy. You see, he isn't actually gone at all. He's here with us, in each of us, and his legacy has just begun. As you gather and talk to each other to celebrate Bud today, I encourage you to embrace that glimpse of Bud that is in each of us and smile the same way he would. We love you, buddy.
Thank you all for being here today to celebrate Bud's life. I am truly grateful. Just looking around this room so full of love and memories of everyone, it's hard to shed a tear. Bud always had a smile. I would like to take a little time to share some of my thoughts about Bud. Some are duplicates, but that's okay. When I think of him, there are a few things that immediately come to my mind. Bud truly was one of a kind. He led a remarkable life. He enjoyed every day. All his texts were written in solid caps with emojis at the end. He was the most non-judgmental person about everything. It was just Bud's way. Everyone was his friend, and he had a lot of friends. Many I didn't, who was that, I'd say. Adversity was just a speed bump along the way. He radiated always joy with everyone he was around. He was never sad. He was the most optimistic and upbeat person I have ever known and loved. He loved laughter and good friends, his family, and all his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. He was always up for a good time. He had no regrets how he had lived his life. He loved all his family unconditionally. I am forever grateful that he scooped me up with 3 kids, my 3 kids, Carrie, Johnny, and Jeffrey, and our dog, who we referred to as a mongrel, to move to Salt Lake City and start a new beginning. I am so happy that I have been blessed with such a beautiful, loving family that have always been so supportive to Bud and myself and my children. We all love Bud. I love you, buddy. Thank you.
that concludes this part of the sort of reflection of life of Bud. You guys are welcome to hang around as you see fit. And then we hope to see all of you back here tonight, 6 to 8. Thank you all.
That was so funny. I remember that clearly. She's like, Colin, everyone thought you were homeless.